I'm going to tell you a story about one of our neighbors. We lived in a quiet, secluded neighborhood, and in a small, run-down house at the end of our dimly lit street, about 3 doors down from us, lived an eccentric old woman named Agnes. Growing up in that neighborhood, I knew her well. Ms. Aggie, as people sometimes called her, was lonely and a non-active widow since her late husband's demise 16 years prior. My husband and I tried to be of assistance many times, realizing that she was elderly and alone, but she rarely came to the door or promptly shooed our attempts to be of assistance away. She wanted to sit in her sadness, but to kill some of the emptiness, her days were filled with smothering furry creatures. So she became known as the Crazy Cat Lady, and her house was literally overrun by dozens and dozens of cats. The animals roamed freely in and around her home, and she had earned her reputation by feeding and sheltering every stray feline that crossed her path. They filled every nook and cranny, and her life had become a twisted existence, revolving entirely around her feline companions. Agnes was a recluse, rarely seen by us or our other neighbors. Her appearance was disheveled, and the stench of cat urine hung heavy in the air around her home. It was rumored that she had lost her sanity after her husband's passing. And having no children, she began talking to the cats as if they were her confidants. Little did anyone know that her cats were far from ordinary. One cold, moonlit night, the cats began to change. Their once usual meows transformed into chilling whispers that echoed through the house. Agnes, accustomed to their constant presence, hardly noticed this eerie change. But as the days passed, their whispers grew louder, more direct, and more sinister. The cats began to speak to Agnes in a language that only she could understand. They told her to commit unspeakable acts, crimes that no one could imagine. Their voices a haunting chorus in the depths of her mind. They urged her to do regrettable things, to commit transgressions that she'd never considered before. Their whispers were a relentless cacophony, impossible to escape. Loving and trusting that these cats were her only true friends in this world, she didn't want to upset them or run them off. Their malevolent instructions drove Ms. Aggie to darkness, and she found herself actually carrying out their wicked deeds under the cover of night. On the first night of her going forth with pleasing her cats, in the throes of their incessant demands, Agnes found herself standing outside the local sports store, a bag filled with stolen items that she didn't want or need in her trembling hands. She felt like a dummy, manipulated by the sinister ventriloquist feline choir in her mind. She tried to resist, but their control over her was absolute. Burglaries, arson, and even acts of gruesome violence began to plague our once peaceful town, with Agnes as the evil puppet behind it all. Our neighbors were horrified, and the authorities were baffled, unable to solve the string of crimes that had terrorized our formerly lovely community. Months passed, and Agnes's sanity deteriorated further as the cats continued to whisper their vile commands. I knew something was even more off with her than even normal, but she was oblivious to the mounting evidence against her, convinced that her feline companions would always have her back. One fateful night, while she was attempting to rob a local store, the authorities finally caught up with Ms. Aggie. She was arrested, her face twisted in desperation and her clothes tattered. After much prompting, she claimed to the police that it was the cats who had forced her into a life of crime, but of course her pleas fell on deaf ears. No one believed her. The court deemed her insane, and she was locked away in a psychiatric facility, leaving her cats behind. I was sad and in disbelief, like everyone else, to learn it was dear Ms. Aggie that was behind such grueling acts. Knowing her hardships, I really felt for her. But our town as a whole breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that the ordeal was over. However, the cats remained, and their scary, demanding whispers continued, even without Agnes's presence. They reveled in their newfound freedom, perpetrating further atrocities across our town, sowing chaos and fear. The crimes continued, baffling the authorities once more. But I wasn't baffled. I knew the truth about the cats. Ms. Aggie may have been a little strange, but she wasn't that crazy. I had witnessed some wrongdoings going on with the cats one night while dropping by Agnes's house to leave some groceries. Another night, I actually could hear the cats having a wicked conversation with her through her front door. When I peeked through a window, I was met with terrifying glares from several cats, their eyes brimming with contempt. But there Agnes's sat, unmoving as if in a trance as she continued conversing passionately with the cats. I quickly hurried away, my mind burning with what I had just witnessed. The terrible things I heard and saw emanating from those creepy cats scared me to pieces. But I kept it to myself, fearing their wrath. And after Ms. Aggie had been locked away, their misdeeds grew even worse. It got so bad that my family and I moved away. My husband and I have 2 very young kids that we wanted to keep safe. And even though I had grown up in that home as a child myself, it was time to move on to new beginnings and leave the horrors of what had become of that neighborhood behind. In the end, the truth of the crazy cat lady was never fully understood by most. Once I did call in an anonymous tip in attempts to give Ms. Agnes's truth some credibility. But nothing was done. I'm sure I wasn't taken seriously. I even tried to visit her, but as I was not blood family, my requests were denied over and over again. So she remained locked up, a mere footnote in the town's dark history. And the cats? Well, they carried on with their unfathomable deeds, a malevolent force that no one could comprehend, and certainly no one could control.
My name is Richard, and my wife Victoria and I used to be part of an affluent circle of friends in the heart of Manhattan. Our lives were opulent, filled with galas and gatherings, until a betrayal unraveled the tapestry of our prosperity. A year ago, a close friend turned investor swindled us, leading to a colossal loss of our fortune. The worst part is that our friend group had already known that this investor friend couldn't be trusted, but had kept mum about the whole thing, even going as far as encouraging us to use his services, causing many of our hard-earned investments to fall into disastrous ruins. We were the newest to the clique, and had no knowledge of his past misgivings. The treachery hurt like a cut that never truly healed. Motive jealousy? Maybe. We were the wealthiest of the gang anyway. So you do the math. The pain of betrayal festered within us, and resentment grew like a malignant seed. Unable to bear the burden of our financial downfall, we concocted a revenge so sinister it bordered on madness. It all started innocently enough, with our beautiful, elegant, and quite charming Persian cat, Mr. Whiskers, making the rounds among our closest friends in Manhattan. We'd invite our dear pals over for a seemingly innocent dinner and drinks. Laughter, carousing, and lovely music filling our spacious penthouse apartment. Little did they know that behind the soft fur and pleading eyes of our cat, a nefarious plot was unfolding. While our clueless guests were at our home those evenings, Mr. Whiskers would scratch each one. And one by one, our dearest companions began to fall ill with a mysterious ailment that defied all medical interventions. Mr. Whiskers, with his sleek body and captivating green eyes, became a Trojan horse of vengeance. Little did our friends know that his seemingly affectionate scratches were laced with the dubious ailment, cat scratch fever, an engineered version of the malady that even antibiotics proved futile against its relentless grip. As our once thriving social circle succumbed to the inexplicable illness, we held no guilt in our consciences. The bitterness of the disloyalty overshadowed any possible remorse. Our former confidants suffered in grave affliction, their lives reduced to a shadow of their former selves, all while we observed from the luxurious confines of our penthouse. Our revenge, as calculated as it was cruel, brought waves of satisfaction. It's the least we could have, as even though we weren't in the poorhouse, a large amount of our wealth would be forever gone. But the taste of this retribution was a currency far more fulfilling. The catalyst for our scheme, the duplicitous investor, had been incarcerated, but the funds he pilfered remained elusive. The walls of our gilded cage resonated with the echoes of our lost riches, the taste of revenge bittersweet on our tongues. Our misdeeds may have become an indelible stain on our souls, but it was a price we were willing to pay for that which was priceless. In the solitude of our lavish apartment, Mr. Whiskers, the unwitting accomplice, purred on my lap. Victoria carefully sat down next to me and sighed heavily. I had begun to notice that the perpetual steely coldness that had remained etched on her beautiful face during our secret matters had slowly started to morph into something else. Humanity. Damn. The city outside glittered with lights, oblivious to the twisted tale unfolding behind closed doors. The cost of vengeance, it seemed, was possibly growing more than we could bear, a heavy toll exacted on both victim and perpetrator alike.